On February 24, 2019, the 91st Academy Awards were in full swing. The ceremony had its usual dose of snubs and surprises, but when it came time to announce the winner of the Best Picture Oscar, few in LA's Dolby Theater were prepared for the 7 words that would come out of Julia Roberts' mouth that would alter the course of film history.
And the Oscar goes to Green Book.
Are you kidding me?
While Green Book's win over Roma may seem obvious, there are several factors that contributed to the shocking upset. Roma not only had more prestige and critical acclaim, one of the most surprising Best Supporting Actress nominations in history for Marina de Tavira, but it also had the historical potential to be the first foreign language film to win the Best Picture Oscar. Even with all of the positives that Roma had working in its favor, they were sadly eventually underscored by the hidden factors that would undermine the artistic and cultural achievement that the film was and remains to this day. Because of the loss of Best Picture for Roma in 2019, we have seen incredible historic first-time nominees and winners that may have gone ignored in years prior. Given the Academy's growing diversity and changing taste, I think it's worth re-exploring the 91st Academy Awards, the chaos that ensued, and the potential for the same results 6 years later in 2025. Would Roma take the crown, or would a completely different film win entirely? It's important to distinguish between two opposing factors at play in 2019, the reasons that Green Book won Best Picture and the reasons that Roma lost Best Picture. These are not the same reasons. Green Book is a heartfelt road trip comedy drama that explores both racial tensions and friendship between different races in 1960s America, following the unlikely bond between a black pianist and his white personal driver. In 2019, several social dynamics influenced the public perception of Green Book. The film received critical praise and was generally considered lighthearted and enjoyable by the average audience member. However, Green Book, as benign and inoffensive as it seemed, served as a clever way for the Academy to have a final hoorah before the start of a new, seemingly over-politically correct decade. Before the pandemic and the Black Lives Matter protests in 2020, the Motion Picture Academy faced significant public scrutiny. Since January 2015, when lawyer and activist April Rain first tweeted the Oscars So White hashtag, the Academy has been openly criticized for its lack of diversity. This backlash intensified after all 20 acting nominations at the 87th Academy Awards went to white actors for the umpteenth time. The Academy repeated this pattern the following year at the 88th Academy Awards, nominating only white actors for all 20 acting categories, again. Green Book was a sentimental film that depicted America in a comfortable light, catering to white audiences primarily. It whitewashed a narrative that should have been told, at least partially, from a black man's perspective, yet nearly the entire cast and crew of Green Book were white, including all of the writers. Similar to The Blind Side in 2009, Green Book used its black male protagonist as a narrative device to support the storylines of its white characters. It's sort of ironic too, as Mahershala Ali has a similar screen time too to Viggo Mortensen, but Mahershala won the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. In fact, he has the single longest Best Supporting Actor performance in history to actually win the Academy Award. But the award feels semi-backhanded because it's category fraud, and Mahershala's character is clearly a co-lead. And even the look on Mahershala's face when he won tells me that he doesn't feel like the win was justified or a fair placement of his performance. And even though his performance in Moonlight is arguably better, he completely swept the season in 2019 for Green Book, and I don't think anyone has questioned the win because of the amount of screen time. Because, as stated, it is category fraud. But Green Book wouldn't leave ceremonies empty-handed, so while Peter Farrelly struggled to get nominated for director, he had greater success winning for screenplay, and Mahershala was a nice inclusion in the winning package for the film as a whole. But while race may have helped in the winning narrative for Green Book, it simultaneously hurt the chances of Roma. There was empathy and understanding for Green Book, where there was apathy and disinterest toward Roma. Roma is a slow-burn, visually poetic drama that chronicles the life of a live-in houseworker in 1970s Mexico City. Set against the backdrop of political unrest with themes of social class, personal identity, and resilience through a more intimate lens. The most widely cited reason for Roma's loss to Green Book is the Academy's lack of diversity. A predominantly white male voting body likely connected more with the white male protagonist Tony Lip in Green Book than with the female Mexican protagonist Cleo in Roma. This is an undeniable issue, as the Academy has a well-documented history of overlooking people of color, not only in terms of nominations and wins, but crucially from within the Academy voting body itself. This is absolutely a factor, it can't be denied. But was it the main reason why Roma lost? By 2019, Netflix cemented itself as the new studio awards darling, at first gaining praise with audiences and critics in television with shows like House of Cards and Orange is the New Black. Netflix was fully invested in the film industry by the late 2010s. Roma was Netflix's Venice Film Festival golden ticket, and the streaming giant's best chance to date at a Best Picture Oscar victory. Netflix clearly invested heavily into for-your consideration ads, allegedly spending upwards of $60 million to get Roma Best Picture, as they knew they had a genuine contender on their hands. But hear me out. What if the industry just simply would never reward Netflix, regardless of how genuinely groundbreaking Roma was? What if the odds were never in Roma's favor?
Roma is a very strong #1 vote, but I have a feeling it's not necessarily everybody's #2 movie if it's not their #1, and it could be their last, because I know people in this town that are purposely voting against it and putting it as low as they can.
Roma, but people are doing that with Green Book as well. That's the problem.
I don't know of anybody that's doing that, but I know people that are doing this not because of the movie, because of Netflix.
Oh, interesting.
They don't want to see Netflix win Best Picture.
In the year 2018 alone, Netflix outspent every major Hollywood studio by spending $12 billion on content and releasing over 80 original films, directly challenging traditional studio dominance. Because of Netflix's decision to prioritize streaming releases over the traditional theatrical distribution model, it caused friction within the film industry and the Motion Picture Academy, sparking debates over the impact of streaming giants like Netflix and its diversion from the classic, quote-unquote, cinematic experience. As Netflix provided a home for mid-budget and indie films like Roma, major Hollywood studios did the opposite and abandoned indie projects in favor of blockbusters, sequels, and remakes, driving smaller films and auteur filmmakers to streaming platforms. As a result, the 91st Academy Awards were less of a this film or this artist versus this one, but more of an entire industry versus this one company and their cultural movement. And if it sounds like Roma had very little to do with this equation, that's because it kind of did. Roma was regarded as exceptional within the industry. No one was denying that. However, Roma's Best Picture loss highlighted ongoing resistance to streaming services within Hollywood. Roma's loss for Best Picture was an unfortunate byproduct of the streaming takeover of the movie industry. Netflix would win the eyeballs of audiences and maybe make the most money, but they would not get the top prize at the Oscars. This was the mentality of many Academy voters at the time. The sad reality may be that although Roma was clearly more artistically risky and more visually cinematic than Green Book, it was the shadow of the 7 letters of the Netflix logo that paved the way for the 7 words, and the Oscar goes to Green Book. The eventual irony and the fears around Netflix potentially winning Best Picture for Roma was rooted in concerns about streaming services disrupting the film industry and diminishing the traditional cinematic experience. However, the pandemic only accelerated pre-existing streaming trends, forcing the entire industry to adapt. The very Hollywood studios that once criticized Netflix eventually joined the streaming race. Today, the outcry over Netflix's disruption has faded, and you notice none of the big boys are complaining anymore, because the major Hollywood studios have caught up. Now, everyone has a streaming service. In fact, the entire industry contradicted itself in 2022, awarding Coda Best Picture, making it the first streaming service movie to win Best Picture in history, as it was distributed by Apple TV+. In a way, it's kind of funny too. The biggest streaming player in the industry was and is Netflix, and the industry rallied against it, which is why they've lost all 9 Best Picture nominations that they've received. But then one of the smallest streaming services ends up winning on their first Best Picture nomination. The ending many thought Roma would have, but was ultimately just shy of. To get a better understanding of the Best Picture race at the 91st Academy Awards, I want to analyze the other nominees and where they may have placed before determining if Roma or Green Book would win if the same ceremony were voted on in 2025. Starting with the highest grossing film in the Best Picture lineup, Black Panther became a cultural and box office phenomenon that excelled in tech categories, notably securing surprise wins for Best Original Score and Costume Design. While Black Panther likely performed decently on a preferential ballot, its overall odds were likely middle of the category. BlacKkKlansman enjoyed most of its award success through its director, writer, and producer, Spike Lee, who by the end of the award season dominated the adapted screenplay conversation. Many were simply happy to see Spike Lee finally win an Oscar, even if not for his best work. BlacKkKlansman likely ranked near the bottom of the Best Picture lineup. The most awarded film of the night was Bohemian Rhapsody. Despite significant controversy surrounding its director, Bryan Singer, Bohemian Rhapsody became an unexpected cultural juggernaut. Anchored by Rami Malek's transformative performance as Freddie Mercury and a nostalgia-driven marketing campaign, the film defied the odds to secure a Best Picture nomination. The favorite was likely in third or fourth place for Best Picture. It could have easily won categories like Original Screenplay, Best Supporting Actress, or Production Design. Olivia Colman's surprise Best Actress win further cemented the film's popularity with Academy voters, suggesting it may have been in the top 3 on the preferential ballot. Among the nominees, A Star is Born captured the zeitgeist of 2018 best with its modern and heartfelt storytelling. Likely a top 3 or 4 contender for Best Picture, A Star is Born showcased Lady Gaga's breakthrough performance, which came tantalizingly close to winning Best Actress. Her victory for Shallow and Best Original Song may have dampened her chances in the acting race, but A Star is Born remains emblematic of its era and maybe has held up the best in the category over time. Vice likely ranked 7th or 8th in the Best Picture lineup. Most of its recognition centered on makeup and hairstyling, for which it deservedly won the Oscar. Honestly, Vice was not even expected to receive a Best Picture nomination, especially considering the more acclaimed films that were snubbed. Vice managed to edge out arguably better films for the Best Picture nomination, like Isle of Dogs, If Beale Street Could Talk, and First Man. If the 91st Academy Awards were hypothetically re-voted on today, how would the awards ceremony turn out? Olivia Colman would probably still win Best Actress, since her win has aged like fine wine. I think Gaga would still easily dominate the song category, her win is undisputed, and Alfonso Cuarón would probably still win his 3 Oscars. But there are 3 categories that I think would change. Rami Malek's performance as Freddie Mercury was great at the time, but I think the consensus has come to agree that Bradley Cooper in A Star is Born was the true best performance in the category. But the hype around Bohemian Rhapsody was too strong for Bradley to overcome. Not to continue the Bohemian Rhapsody hate train, but I think they would also lose their Best Editing Oscar to a more deserving winner like Vice or The Favorite. I'm not really sure why they won editing, honestly. It's so baffling, which is why I think a revote would correct this. And finally, I do genuinely think Green Book would lose Best Picture in 2025. With everything in the world that has happened since 2019, I think Green Book would be considered way too safe as a winner. The question is, who do they lose to? I'm not sure where the consensus is on this outside of Roma winning, but I think genuinely A Star is Born could win Best Picture if it was re-voted on in 2025. The abundance of musical biopics we've had in recent years confirms not only industry investment in these projects, but the public interest in seeing certain figures portrayed on screen, and A Star is Born was one of the biggest ones. Outside of the obvious scenario of Roma simply winning on a revote, I do think A Star is Born would be a very close second, as it's aged like fine wine, and I think it is still the best performances of Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga's careers. At the time, I really did enjoy the 2019 Oscars as they happened, but I've grown more conflicted with its results as time has gone on. Part of me wonders if Roma's loss contributed to some more deserving wins down the line. Maybe Parasite wouldn't have won Best Picture if Roma had won its year. The Academy could have easily said, nope, we did it once, don't have to do it again, like they did with Moonlight. And maybe I'm wrong, and Green Book would completely sweep on a revote, and everything remains unchanged. Obviously it's tough to say, but it's fun to speculate. When it comes to award shows and things like winning Oscars, you have to take what you can get. Sometimes it's more about the politics than the performances. While Roma may have failed at winning Best Picture, it brought attention to a touching and hidden story that most people may go their entire life without experiencing, but now because of Roma, an entire population feels represented, and there is now a face, a voice, and a story that will now be heard and seen for generations to come. And that is a true Best Picture.